Everyone, we're going to get started here. If everyone can take a seat. My name is Serena Gruya. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here with Albemarle County, and I'm so thrilled to see all of you here. And I'm going to give a hello virtually to our friends on Zoom. Thank you for joining us. We are thrilled to have this event tonight to talk through the Environmental Stewardship chapter and the Parks and Recreation and Open Space chapter with you. We have amazing staff on hand to answer questions and work through the content and take your feedback. So with that, I'm going to bring Tori Kanellopoulos up to start us off.
Thank you, Serena. And good evening, everyone. My name is Tori Kanellopoulos. I'm in the Community Development Department on the Comprehensive Plan Update team, and I'm joined by several colleagues this evening from Community Development and Parks and Facilities and Environmental Services, so they'll be able to help answer questions as well. So a quick overview of what we'll be doing this evening. We'll start off with this presentation, walking through where we've been with the comprehensive plan update, talking about how the plan is structured, a quick refresher on the growth management policy, and then walking through the two chapters that we'll be asking for your feedback on this evening, which are environmental stewardship and parks, and then the next steps for the project. And then after the presentation, we'll move out to the breakout rooms, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So looking back at where we've been with the project, in phase one, we developed the guiding principles for an equitable and resilient community. So some of you may have been involved in that phase and sharing your feedback to develop those. And they're shown in the circle on the slide, and they are green and resilient, welcoming and equitable, connected and accessible, and thriving and prosperous. So those build a foundation where we heard common ground to help develop plan recommendations. We also did the land use build-out analysis to look at the capacity of our development areas to accommodate projected growth, and then looked at the growth management policy, which I'll talk a little bit more about. In the second phase, we updated the goals and objectives. So some of you all may have been involved in sharing your input for those. So to develop goals and objectives, we heard lots of community input. We heard direction from the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. We gathered a lot of staff technical expertise and then did a review of best practices from other localities and looked at which recommendations in the 2015 comprehensive plan should be carried forward. We also developed land use and transportation planning tools for coordinating land use and multimodal transportation planning, and those include the activity centers for development areas land use. So there were a variety of ways that people learned about the comp plan and shared their feedback in phases 1 and 2, and that included workshops, open houses, pop-ups, roundtables, and online questionnaires. And we heard community needs and priorities, and those helped inform the plan recommendations that were developed. So I'll share a quick overview of how the plan itself is structured. There are 4 parts. The first is the community vision. So that will have an introduction that shares the purpose of a comprehensive plan and some background, context, and data for Albemarle County, the county's vision, and then the guiding principles that were developed in phase 1. So far we have shared the county's vision, which remains the same, and the guiding principles, but have not yet rolled out the rest of part 1. Part 2 is the growth management framework. So that includes an overview of the growth management policy and some history about the policy, the text of the policy itself, how it's applied in the development areas and the rural area, and then development areas utilization review, which is very similar to the capacity analysis, looking at how we're using our development areas and how we're growing. So far we've shared an updated policy and the utilization review criteria, but have not shared the rest of part 2 yet. Part 3 is plan implementation. So there's a standard structure for each of those 10 chapters. There's an introduction, which includes major findings and trends informing the chapter, and also narrative on the major topics that are part of that chapter. And then there's a goal, objectives, and actions for each. And so far, we have rolled out 4 out of those 10 chapters, including the 2 we're talking about this evening. The 4th section is the appendix. So that will include metrics or indicators of progress to see how we're doing with implementing the plan and see where we may need to make adjustments along the way. We'll have a framework for updating the area plans, related and reference plans that are referred to in the comprehensive plan, such as the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, and then a project report for the process for the comp plan update and a summary of engagement that we've heard. And the appendix has not been rolled out yet, so that will be another forthcoming section. So many of you are probably familiar with the growth management policy, but it may be new to some of you as well. So a quick refresher. It was established with the county's first comprehensive plan in 1971, and it designates the development areas and the rural area. And currently the rural area is about 95% of the county's land area, and the development areas are about 5%. It directs growth and density to the development areas, and then recommends limited development in the rural area, with primary rural area land uses being agriculture, forestry, and conservation. So the initial purpose of the growth management policy was to protect the water supply watersheds, which are primarily in the rural area, and to direct growth to the development areas for more cost-effective service delivery. And then over time, that policy has really been expanded to also focus on important quality of life factors in the development areas like walkability and multimodal transportation. So today, we will have 3 stations for you to visit to share your feedback. The first is in the lobby, and that will just be general project information. And if you want to share feedback about the comprehensive plan that may not exactly fit into the other stations and ask questions. Station 2 is actually going to be in room 241. So if you walk out of the lobby or into the lobby and turn right, on your left will be that room for environmental stewardship. And then if you walk straight out of the auditorium, on your right will be room 235, and that will be for the Parks chapter. So I'll share an overview of the environmental stewardship chapter. So this chapter covers a variety of topics, including waterways and stream and river health, water quality and stormwater management, biodiversity, habitat connectivity, and then incorporating recommendations from the Biodiversity Action Plan and the Stream Health Initiative, which is new since the current comprehensive plan, the 2015 plan, was adopted. So the Stream Health Initiative is part of the history of water resource protection in the county since the 1970s. As mentioned, that's the foundation of the growth management policy, with about 46% of land in the rural area in water supply watersheds. In 2017, the board directed county staff to develop strategies to improve stream health, and phase 1 was focused on development-related issues, and implementation is ongoing. And then phase 2 is focused on the rural area. There was significant community and stakeholder input, with the result of 14 recommendations presented to the board in 2021. And those recommendations have been incorporated into the actions of this chapter. So these are some examples of stream health recommendations. They include riparian buffer standards, and an example of a riparian buffer around a stream is shown on the slide. Land conservation for water quality, expanding watershed education, low impact development for stormwater management, and that would be treating stormwater on site for a development. And those types of stormwater management facilities would mimic natural processes like a green roof or a rain garden. And if you're interested to learn more about the Stream Health Initiative, we'll have staff in the environmental stewardship room, and they can share more details as well. So another important part of this chapter is incorporated recommendations from the Biodiversity Action Plan. So that is a separate plan that's adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, and it has more detailed recommendations for habitat connectivity, riparian buffers, and land management. It was completed in 2018 by county staff and the Natural Heritage Committee, and the key recommendations from that plan were actually adopted into the Natural Resources chapter in the 2015 plan. So we're making sure to carry forward those priority recommendations in the updated comp plan. And then there's also action 4.1 for this chapter to update the Biodiversity Action Plan itself. So we also wanted to include some information about how you can get involved in the community. So there's a QR code and the web link to the Environmental Stewardship Hub page. This also is included as a QR code on one of the posters in the Environmental Stewardship room. So feel free to scan the code there if that's easier as well. So there are recommendations for things that you can do at your home or on your land or within your community to help protect the environment and help implement the comp plan. So since this is a comprehensive plan, there's lots of connections between the chapters. So we wanted to highlight just a few of the ways that the environmental stewardship chapter overlaps with other chapters. So for resilient community, that includes protecting the natural environment, such as avoiding building in floodplains. It includes how we manage our parks and trails in an environmentally sustainable way. It includes land conservation and habitat connectivity in the rural area, and then increasing access to nature, green infrastructure, and tree coverage in the development areas. So each chapter will have a goal statement, objectives, and actions for each of those 10 implementation chapters. So the goal is where we want to be as a community in 20 years. The objectives are what we need to achieve, so the targets to make sure we get there. And then the actions are how we will implement the plan to achieve those objectives. So this is the goal for the environmental stewardship chapter. So this incorporates community priorities and the guiding principles. And it includes having a healthy, thriving, and resilient ecosystem by preserving and restoring the natural environment, having habitat connectivity, natural carbon sinks, and improving our resilience to climate change. There are 5 objectives for this chapter, and they are to protect and restore waterways, reduce unmanaged stormwater management, protect and improve the quality and quantity of groundwater, protecting and restoring critical habitats, and then improving habitat connectivity. So there are a variety of actions in this chapter to implement those objectives, and those will be included in the posters in the breakout room, and they're also available on the website for this chapter. So this just summarizes a few of the actions, again, including those stream health initiative recommendations for riparian buffers and low impact development and protecting groundwater. There are also many recommendations related to habitats and the biodiversity action plan, as well as protecting and enhancing dark skies, and then working with state agencies to reconnect interrupted wildlife corridors. So just a preview of many of the actions in that chapter. And now I'll hand it off to Ben to talk about the Parks and Rec chapter.
All right, thank you, Tori, and good evening, everybody. Ben Holt, I'm with the county's long-range planning team. So the chapter content for parks, recreation, and open space, it covers the county parks and trail networks, our community centers where activities take place, as well as recreation and athletic programs and opportunities in the county. Our primary amenities include greenways that provide public trail networks, blueways, which provide water trails and stream access, and also the community centers that offer gathering spaces and recreational opportunities. There is a significant topic overlap with transportation planning as parts of the county's paved shared use path network or portions of the greenway network offer off-street transportation connections and multimodal travel. These networks are coordinated with our county transportation team and VDOT. The chapter also includes sustainable management practices and environmental preservation. Our parks and greenway properties provide an opportunity for the county to model strategies such as no-mow zones, removal of invasive species, and protection of environmental features such as stream banks. And we'd like to announce, if you haven't heard already, that Biscuit Run is the county's newest and largest park, which opened to the public this past fall. Future enhancement of the park will include athletic fields, biking amenities, and an expansion of its trail network that will provide connections to the 5th Street Shopping Center. We are also working to develop the Free Bridge Lane Promenade in the Pantops area with a pilot program for public feedback that just opened in the fall. The converted street section provides a vehicle-free zone for walking, running, and biking. And in addition to transportation, the Parks and Recreation chapter also overlaps with many other topic chapters, which include resilient community, community facilities, the development area's land use, and historic resources. The chapter's goal statement, objectives, and actions are available for review with the posters in the Parks and Recreation breakout room, as Tori mentioned just a moment ago. The goal statement provides direction for a connected and accessible parks and trails network, offering active modes of transportation, access to nature, and enhancing the quality of life for our ever-growing community. There are 7 draft objectives, and these include planning for the current and future needs of the county in terms of parks and greenways, expanding ownership of county land for parks and greenways, a focus on expanding the parks, particularly within the development areas, increasing public access, enhanced environmental resilience, expanding our trails network and multimodal travel, and recreational and program opportunities to the county. The actions include ongoing updates of our Parks and Recreation Needs Assessment, developing a county-wide parks and open space master plan to guide our efforts, and equitable distribution of parks and trails within our development areas. Other actions include expanding universal access to our facilities, utilizing environmentally sustainable practices, and expanding access to waterways, especially within the Rivanna River. And with that, I'd like to remind you that we do have feedback forms in each of the breakout rooms. These are so you can provide specific feedback on particular actions or even suggest new actions pertaining to the topic. So looking ahead for the next steps of AC44, we are currently in phase 3, and throughout the rest of phase 3, we will continue to develop the comprehensive plan document and the actions for each of the topic chapters. These will be shared with the public as well as the County Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors for feedback. Opportunities for public involvement will continue to be posted on the AC44 website, which we'll circle back to again later. And our upcoming work sessions for the month of February include revisiting the information about the rural area and the development areas chapters, the county's growth management policy, and that's going to be with the Board of Supervisors on February 12th. And then for Parks and Recreation, we have the Planning Commission meeting work session on the 11th and a board session on the 19th of February. And throughout the rest of the spring, we will hold monthly lunch and learn sessions online for the public to learn about the various topic chapters. And we're also going to continue to have in-person check-ins quarterly. Our chapter rollouts will continue online, and the work sessions with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors will be posted in advance, so you all will know those upcoming dates each month. So we will continue to provide these opportunities for public participation, and these will be announced in our newsletter updates through the Engage Albemarle website and the county's supported social media. County staff will continue to publish the draft chapters, and we also have these neat and tidy shorter chapter summaries that are on the website. And we'll also produce chapter video presentations to provide some context for the chapters, and also offering the lunch and learn meetings, which we will record for future viewing for those who are unable to attend them live. Community members can participate by reading these chapter materials, utilizing the Ask a Planner tool online, where you can submit your questions directly to us, and also attending these monthly online lunch and learn sessions that I just mentioned, along with those Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors work sessions. Public comment on the plan actions will be received throughout the rest of the chapter rollouts this spring. And with that, we'll pause for general questions. I just wanted to remind everybody that we will have detailed information about these 2 topic chapters, and you'll have opportunities to speak with planners and county staff within each of those rooms. So if you have specific detailed questions about the topics and content, those are probably best be held until we do those breakout sessions. But for general AC44 questions, I'm going to pass it over to Serena to field the questions that you do have for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. One thing he didn't mention was we have a podcast that's called Chapter by Chapter, and it's like 5 to 8 minutes if you want to take a listen on each of the chapters that have been published so far. So while you're making your morning coffee or riding your bike into work, you can take a listen to that. And I also want to introduce the staff that we have up front. You have a lot of different questions, I'm sure. So our team has worked, we have our planning staff, but we also have some amazing staff on hand to answer questions, and they'll be in the rooms as well. So if we can just introduce.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie Powers, the Climate Action Program Manager. Looking forward to the conversation.
Good evening. I'm Laurel Williamson in the Environmental Services Division, and I'm the Watershed Stewardship Manager, one of 2 Watershed Stewardship Managers.
Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Harper, and I'm the Chief of Environmental Services.
Thanks. And for our friends watching on Zoom, we are going to be taking audience questions, but I also invite you to join us online at the website and share your questions and your feedback there. Our Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, Nicole, is going to share a link in the chat for you. Oh, yeah. Oh. And we have one more person to introduce, and then we'll start the questions.
Hey, everybody. I'm Tim Padalino. I work in the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm the Chief of Parks Planning and look forward to chatting with you in the breakout room. Thanks.
Okay, we have one more. I'm going to get my steps.
Next time. Hey everyone, I'm Dan Butch. I'm Parks Planner for Albemarle County Parks and Recreation.
And I'm also part of the AC44 team. My name is Tanya Schwarzengerber. Thank you.
I like to call this wraparound services. You are fully surrounded. Okay, raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, please have a question. We have a little sweet one back there. We can also just start with the breakout rooms if no one has any questions. Oh, yep, thank you.
I was just wondering how you differentiate the resiliency chapter from the environment chapter, because it seems like there are a lot of overlaps and there's pretty heavy concentration on water health, but I didn't see much related to potential for wildfires in terms of forest health. So just curious how that's handled.
Great question. Okay, we have 2 people on hand.
Thank you. That is a good question. Oh, sure. Yes. So I think the question was kind of what's the difference between the environmental stewardship and the resilient community chapter, and maybe also where's the overlap between the 2? Is that fair? Okay. So yes, the environmental stewardship chapter is pretty focused on the biodiversity action plan and stream health initiative and related recommendations. But there will also be a lot of overlap with the resilient community chapter. So we're also tracking the Resilient Together project, which Jamie can share a little bit more about, but that includes planning for the effects of climate change and trying to make our community more resilient as a baseline to those effects. So thinking about things like flooding, wildfires, things like that. And also there will be recommendations for local food systems and kind of overall community health and well-being in that resilient community chapter. So a little bit more broad than just climate change resilience.
Thanks, Tori. And I think what I would add is that the resilient community chapter is sort of like an outcome-based chapter where we know that climate hazards and other hazards are sort of headed our way and are already here in many regards. And so that's sort of like a visioning how we can be resilient in the face of those. The environmental stewardship and the climate action content that is going to be throughout all of the chapters is really focused on more on now, right? And how we can protect what we have, grow what we have, improve what we have so that we can be resilient. And so I think you'll see this sort of stream of content that leads us to that final chapter of resilient community. Does that help? Okay, great.
Any other questions?
Okay, I have a question here. So I'm looking at phase 3 of the Parks and Recreations plan here. Action 6.1, it reads, construct and maintain sustainable new trails for hiking, mountain biking, and horseback riding, providing a variety of trail rides, trail options for different trail users. One of my associates called down to Parks and Recreation and asked about horseback riding trails, and they were told no. So which is it?
I'm going to come over here to Tim, our Chief Parks Planner.
Thank you, Serena. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think there's a distinction between, developing and managing specific facilities at specific parks in a certain fiscal year and more long-range county-wide planning. So absolutely, Albemarle County supports equestrian use. We currently provide that use at 2 county parks, Patricia Ann Byram Forest Park and Preserve, and also Pretty Creek Trails Park. Myself and our director, Bob Krickenberger, and others have been engaged around this topic, specifically relating to Biscuit Run Park. Yes, yes. And I think what I understand is that the park master planning process didn't really lead to equestrian use being a high volume request or a priority use. This was back in 2018 and 2019. So right now, currently, our focus is on implementing the adopted park master plan, again, which does not include equestrian use or other uses that were previously contemplated in the state park master plan, which is no longer relevant because it's not going to be a state park. So I think at this point, our focus really is on implementing capital projects that are funded, trying to find funding for other projects that are in the plan, and not necessarily looking to replan or re-engage around what uses are in phase 1.
And here's where I'm a little bit upset is that when the Commonwealth owned that park, we talked about horseback riding being part of the plan, and they said that they were going to talk to the neighbors. We are the farm that's right there adjacent to that park, and those people never talked to us, not once. And yet they came to a public meeting and said that they talked to all the neighbors.
Well, thank you for the question. Just to repeat a summary of the question is how much engagement is needed to change the master plan, if that's a fair summation. I don't know that there's a magic number. I'm really just reflecting on the master planning process from 2018 and 2019, which did include significant public engagement, as I understand it. Was not involved at that time with Parks and Recreation. But I do understand that there was a public hearing with our Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, a survey, other public meetings. And as I understand it, it was not identified as a priority use at the time. The other information I've learned from our management team is that, our master plan for this new county park had to be approved by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. That's a state agency. The Commonwealth of Virginia still owns Biscuit Run Park. And I understand that they were going to require a separation of uses. So a trail network for hiking, running, and mountain biking, and a separate trail network for any equestrian use that the county could have done at that time, with separate, trailhead turnarounds and parking spaces that meet the standards for horse trailers and that type of access. That is not the only the reason or the only explanation, but I think that was a part of the master planning process.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jody Filardo. I'm the Community Development Director for this fine county. And I just wanted to respond in addition to the question about how to engage and how to let somebody know you're all are interested in equestrian facilities or equestrian uses of parks. The good news is one of the action steps in this plan that's coming forward is that there is going to be a parks master planning process. So your timing is really spot on. I would encourage you, when you go to the room, the Parks and Rec room, write that down on the papers, because this is the very kind of feedback we're looking for. So thank you for coming out tonight, and that will get folded into our ongoing process. Fair enough.
I wanted to know how we open the conversation for the future for the use of equestrian trails in the park. But sounds like we have our answer to get started.
Any other questions? All right. Corey, do we have any more slides before we break out? Okay. All right. Well, thank you to everyone on Zoom. There's a camera right there. I'm not just. We are going to conclude the Zoom now and then shift everyone in person to the three breakout rooms that we have. And again, I encourage, if you're watching on Zoom, to visit our website. The content is there, and there's a Ask a Planner tool and several other tools that you can engage with, as well as an email address that you can contact us directly. So thank you for being here, and I invite everyone here to join us in the room of your choice. Again, Parks and Recreation is in the room just off the lobby, and then Environmental Stewardship is take a right, and it's your first door on the left. And we'll meet you in there.